Let's say you want to code a count from 1 to 3 and then say go, as if we are racing. You could do this by logging each step to the console for 1, 2, 3, and go. While this method works, imagine a situation where you have to count from 1 to 10, 1 to 100, or even more. Would we have to type the console.log method 100 times? Luckily, there's a more efficient way to do this by using something called a for loop. Okay, so let me just clear my console and paste in an example of how to do this using a for loop. First is the declaration using the for keyword. This declaration consists of something known as the counter. The counter is a variable which is typically named I for iterator, but you could use any variable name you want. The counter has 3 conditions for the for loop to function. First, the start count value must be assigned. In this example, it's 1. The second condition is the end count value, and this specifies how many times the loop will iterate or run. In this example, the condition is that the value of I must be less than or equal to 3 for the loop to run. The final part is the incrementer, which changes the value of I on each loop. It's set to increase the number stored in the variable I by 1 each time the code inside the loop runs. You may have learned the technique I equal to I plus 1, but you can also use the syntax I plus plus as another way to increase the value of I by 1. If you do not specify how the value of I should be increased after each loop, the for loop will run forever, as I would always be less than 3. So you need something known as an exit condition. The exit condition works with the incrementer to prevent the loop from running forever by specifying at which value to terminate the loop. In this example, the loop terminates when the value of I is greater than 3. So the loop will terminate when the exit condition returns false. In other words, until the value of I equals 4. And since 4 less than or greater than 3 returns false, the for loop will exit and JavaScript will continue reading and running code below it. The final part of the for loop is the loop body, which is enclosed in curly braces. This contains the block of code that I want to run on each loop iteration. In this example, I want to print the value of I to the console using console.log method. Notice that this code outputs the same result as displayed earlier. Let's see it in action. Great, you've just created your first for loop. There are different ways that you can work with for loops. For example, I could start my count at 10 and set the value of I to be greater than 0. Now, instead of incrementing the value of I with plus plus, I can decrement with the value minus minus. This is essentially like counting backward. And instead of saying go, we might say Happy New Year. I press enter and notice the result. The countdown outputs from 10 to 1, and the greeting Happy New Year is displayed. Let's break down what's happening here. The console.log part of the for loop was repeated 10 times until the value of I reached 0. Once the value of I reached 0, the condition I greater than 0 was no longer met and the loop exited. Remember, a for loop is a way to automate repetition in JavaScript. Why not try creating one in your own code to repeat some code?